Love yourself differently. Most relationships don't end because love disappears. They end because intimacy dies quietly and no one talks about the real reason why. Stay with me because this might explain what's missing in your relationship right now. One, let's be real for a second. When people talk about intimacy, they love to dance around the topic of sex like it's optional or secondary, but in real relationships, good sex is not a bonus feature, it's a core system. You can have a deep conversation, shared values, emotional bonding, and still feel something is missing if the sexual connection feels flat, forced, or disconnected. Good sex isn't just about a physical pleasure, it's about feeling desired, chosen, and emotionally safe in someone's arm. When sex is good, it creates a powerful loop of trust, vulnerability, and closeness that spills into every other part of the relationship, making everyday interactions warmer and more meaningful. Two, good sex works like emotional glue. It strengthens the bond in ways that words alone can't. During truly connected sex, your body releases chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine that literally wire you to your partner, making you feel closer, calmer, and more secure. This isn't some abstract theory, it's biology. When couples consistently experience satisfying sex, they argue less aggressively, recover faster from conflict, and feel more motivated to show up for each other. Sex becomes a shared language, a nonverbal way of saying I see you, I want you, and I'm here, even when life feels chaotic or stressful. 3. A lot of people confuse frequency with quality, but real intimacy comes from how sex feels emotionally, not how often it happens. You can have sex every day and still feel lonely if there's no presence, curiosity, or emotional engagement. Good sex means being tuned in. Pay attention to your partner's reactions, energy, and unspoken needs. It means slowing down enough to actually feel each other instead of rushing toward an outcome. When sex becomes intentional rather than routine, it stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a deep emotional exchange that keeps the relationship alive. For one uncomfortable truth is that many relationships slowly lose intimacy not because love disappears, but because sex becomes awkward, predictable, or avoided altogether. People stop talking about what they want, what feels good, or what has changed. Silence replaces curiosity. Good sex requires communication, not clinical or awkward conversations, but honest human ones. And when partners can talk openly about desire without shame or fear of rejection, sex becomes a space of growth instead of pressure. That openness builds a trust far beyond the bedroom and teaches both people that vulnerability is safe. 5. Good sex also plays a huge role in how valued someone feels in a relationship. A feeling wanted physically reinforces emotional security, and when your partner desires you, touches you with intention, and shows enthusiasm, it sends a powerful message: you matter to me. Over time, this boosts self-esteem and reduces insecurity, jealousy, and emotional distance. On the flip side, when sexual connection is neglected, people often internalize it as rejection, even if that wasn't the intention. This quiet erosion can damage intimacy long before anyone notices the relationship is drifting. Sex, another overlooked aspect, is how sex helps couples reset after conflict. You don't fix problems with sex, but good sex after emotional repair can reinforce forgiveness and reconnection. It reminds both people why they chose each other in the first place, that physical closeness lowers emotional defenses and brings back warmth after tension. Couples who maintain a healthy sexual connection often find it easier to move past misunderstandings because their bond isn't just intellectual, it's embodied, emotional, and deeply felt. 7. At its core, good sex is about person. It's about being fully there, mentally, emotionally, and physically, with the person you care about. When sex is real, connected, and mutually satisfying, it becomes the backbone of intimacy, supporting everything else in the relationship. Without it, emotional closeness often struggles to stand on its own. With it, even difficult phases feel more manageable. This is why couples who invested in their sexual connection don't just survive long term, they actually feel alive together. If this is heading close to home, don't skip ahead. The next part is where real intimacy starts to make sense. 8. One thing most people don't realize is that good sex is something you either have or don't have. It's a skill that evolves with emotional awareness. Long-term intimacy phase when partners assume desire should stay automatic forever. Real intimacy requires effort, curiosity, and emotional presence. When couples actively pay attention to how their connection changes over time, sex becomes a living conversation rather than a fixed routine. This mindset shift alone can revive attraction and stop relationships from falling into emotional autopilot. 9. A good sex thrives on emotional safety. When someone feels judged, rushed, or emotionally unseen, their body shuts down even if they want closeness. True intimacy happens when both partners feel safe enough to relax, express themselves, and let go of performance. The safety doesn't come from technique, it comes from consistency, respect, and emotional attunement. When people feel safe, desire becomes natural rather than forced, and sex turns into a space of genuine connection instead of pressure or obligation. 10. Another key factor is curiosity. Many couples stop being curious about each other once they feel secure, assuming they already know everything there is to know. But desire feeds on curiosity. Even partners ask questions, listen without defensiveness, and stay open to change. Intimacy depends on good sex often reflects on how curious the two people are about each other's inner world. The more emotionally curious you are, the more alive and connected your physical relationship feels. 11. Good sex also mirrors emotional honesty. When someone hides resentment, unmet needs, or emotional distance, it eventually shows up in the bedroom. The body doesn't lie. Disconnection outside the bedroom creates disconnection inside it. This is why couples who address emotional issues openly tend to have more satisfying sex. They don't use intimacy to escape problems, they use honesty to strengthen intimacy. That emotional transparency builds trust, which directly fuels desire. 12. Many people underestimate how much a daily behavior impacts sexual intimacy. Small things like affection, appreciation, and emotional availability stability throughout the day create the foundation for closeness at night. Good sex doesn't start in the bedroom, it starts in how partners treat each other when sex isn't on the table. When someone feels emotionally nourished, they're more open to physical closeness. This is why consistent emotional effort matters more than grand romantic gestures. 13. There's also a strong connection between self-awareness and sexual satisfaction. When people understand their own needs, boundaries, and emotional triggers, they bring clarity into the relationship. But sex requires knowing yourself as much as knowing your partner. When both people take responsibility for their emotional and physical experiences, intimacy becomes a balance instead of confusing or frustrating. This mutual responsibility prevents blame and strengthens trust. 14. At the deepest level, good sex reinforces the feeling of us. It reminds both partners that they're a team emotionally and physically. In long-term relationships, this shared experience becomes a grounding force during stressful or uncertain times. When intimacy feels real and connected, it anchors the relationship and provides emotional stability. This is why couples who prioritize sexual connection often feel more resilient even when life throws challenges their way. Quick question: does this sound familiar in your relationships? Drop a comment and keep watching because the next insight might change how you see intimacy. 15. And one of the biggest intimacy killers in relationship is the unspoken expectation that desire should be effortless. Movies and social media sell the idea that if the chemistry is real, sex should always follow naturally. In reality, long-term intimacy requires intention. When couples believe effort means something is wrong, they stop investing. Good sex doesn't mean constant passion. It means that two people choosing to stay emotionally engaged even when life feels repetitive, stressful, or exhausting. That choice is what separates surface level attraction from deep intimacy. 16. Another common mistake is avoiding uncomfortable conversations about sex. Many people stay silent because they're afraid of hurting their partner's feelings or being misunderstood. But silence slowly builds distance. Good sex depends on feedback, honesty, and emotional courage. When partners can talk about what they enjoy, what feels off, or what they want more of, intimacy becomes collaborative instead of confusing. These conversations don't weaken attraction, they strengthen it by creating clarity and mutual understanding. 17. Resentment is another silent intimacy destroyer. When emotional needs go unmet for too long, resentment builds beneath the surface. Even if the relationship looks fine on the outside, that emotional weight shows up physically as a dissonance, attention, or emotional withdrawal during sex. Good sex can't coexist with unresolved resentment. Couples who address issues early rather than letting them pile up protect their intimacy and keep desire from turning into obligation or avoidance. 18. Many people also confuse routine with stability. While routines can feel safe, they can also drain excitement if nothing ever changes. Good sex benefits from novelty, not necessarily in extreme ways, but two small shifts in energy, attention, and emotional presence. Even changing how you connect emotionally can reignite attraction. Intimacy thrives when partners stay mentally and emotionally engaged instead of relying relying on habits to carry the connection. 19. Another overlooked factor is emotional availability. When someone is consistently distracted, stressed, or emotionally checked out, intimacy naturally suffers. Good sex requires a mentor presence. You can't feel deeply connected if one or both partners are emotionally somewhere else. This is why managing stress, setting boundaries with work, and protecting couple time matters. Emotional availability outside the bedroom directly impacts intimacy inside it. 20. Comparison also damages intimacy more than people realize. When individuals compare their sex life to unrealistic standards online or to past experiences, dissatisfaction grows. Good sex is deeply personal and relational. It's about how two specific people connect, not how it looks from the outside. Letting go of comparison allows couples to focus on what actually works for them, strengthening intimacy instead of chasing external validation. At 21, at this stage, it becomes clear that good sex isn't about perfection, it's about alignment, emotional alignment, communication alignment, and mutual effort. When couples stop chasing an idealized version of intimacy and start nurturing the real one, they have. Connection depends. This shift alone can transform sex from something pressured into something grounding, meaningful, and emotionally satisfying. When was the last time sex actually made you feel deeply connected? 22. One of the most effective ways to strengthen intimacy is learning how to be emotionally present without trying to fix or counter your partner. Many people approach relationships with a problem solving mindset, especially during emotional moments. But good sex grows in spaces where partners feel heard, not managed. When someone feels emotionally accepted as their body relaxes and desire flows more naturally. Presence, real, undistracted presence, creates a sense of being chosen in the moment, and which is deeply erotic in ways most people underestimate. 23. Another practical shift is redefining what intimacy actually means in daily life. Intimacy isn't just a deep talks or physical closeness, it's the accumulation of small moments of connection, eye contact, general touch, laughter, and emotional check-ins throughout the day builds a foundation that makes a sex feel more connected later. When couples treat intimacy as an ongoing process rather than an event, their sexual connection becomes richer and more emotionally grounded. 24. Good sex also improves when partners let go of rigid roles and expectations. Many people unconsciously fall into patterns about how should initiate, who should lead, or how desire should look. These roles can quietly limit connection. When couples allow flexibility and shared responsibility for intimacy, sex feels more natural and less pressured. This freedom encourages authenticity, making intimacy feel collaborative instead of scripted. 25. Another key habit is learning how to repair emotional disconnection quickly. Every relationship experiences moments of distance, misunderstanding, or emotional withdrawal. What matters isn't avoiding these moments, but how quickly partners reconnect. Simple actions like sincere apologies, emotional validation, or intentional closeness can prevent small rifts from turning into long-term intimacy issues. Good sex thrives when emotional repair is a part of the relationship culture. 26. Self-regulation also plays a critical role in intimacy. When individuals manage their own emotions instead of projecting stress, frustration, or insecurity onto their partner. The relationship feels safer. Emotional stability makes intimacy feel predictable in a good way and not boring but secure. There's a sense of safety allows desire to emerge without fear of conflict or rejection, strengthening both emotional and physical connection. 27. Another powerful but underrated practice is expressing appreciation, feeling valued, fuels attraction. And when partners consistently acknowledge each other's efforts, qualities, and presence, emotional warmth increases. This warmth translates directly into physical closeness. Appreciation creates a positive emotional atmosphere where intimacy feels inviting rather than obligatory, turning sex into a natural extension of emotional connection. 28. Good sex is built through intentional emotional habits and not spontaneous moments. When couples invest in emotional presence, flexibility, repair, and appreciation, intimacy becomes resilient. It no longer depends on mood or circumstance. Instead, it becomes a reliable source of connection that supports the relationship through both calm and challenging phases. If this is giving you clarity, tap the like button. It helps this channel reach people who actually need this conversation. Now, let's go deeper. 29. As relationships mature, many couples start believing that emotional connection alone should be enough to carry them forward. While emotional intimacy is essential, without a satisfying sexual connection, something vital slowly weakens. Good sex keeps intimacy grounded in the body, not just the mind. It reminds the partners that their connection is alive, physical, and real. When sex stays connected and intentional, it prevents relationships from drifting into emotional companionship without desire, which is one of the most common reasons long-term couples feel quietly unfulfilled. Thirdly, good sex also acts as a mirror, reflecting the overall health of a relationship. When intimacy feels strained, it's often a sign that something deeper needs attention. Instead of seeing sexual challenges as failures, couples can view them as feedback. This perspective transforms intimacy into a guide rather than a pressure point. When partners respond with curiosity instead of blame, sex becomes a space for growth and understanding rather than anxiety or avoidance. 31. Another powerful truth is that intimacy depends when partners allow themselves to change. People evolve emotionally, mentally, and physically over time. A good sex adapts to those changes instead of resisting them. Couples who stay open to growth rather than clinging to old versions of desire keep intimacy flexible and real. This adaptability allows sex to remain meaningful across different life stages, from early passion to deeper, more grounded connection. 32. Good sex also reinforces commitment in a way that words alone cannot. Physical intimacy creates shared experiences that strengthen emotional memory. These moments build a sense of we that becomes especially important during difficult times when challenges arise. Couples who have a strong sexual bond often feel more motivated to work through problems because their connection feels worth protecting. Intimacy becomes a reminder of what's at stake and why the relationship matters. 33. It's important to understand that good sex isn't about constant excitement or flawless performance. It's about mutual presence, effort, and emotional honesty. When couples stop chasing perfection and focus on connection, intimacy becomes a more sustainable. This mindset reduces pressure and increases enjoyment, allowing sex to feel like a shared experience rather than a test. Over time, this approach builds confidence and trust, which are essential for lasting intimacy. 34. At its strongest, sexual intimacy becomes a source of emotional nourishment. It provides reassurance, closeness, and a sense of belonging that strengthens the relationship from the inside out. Couples who nurture this aspect of their bond often report feeling more secure, understood, and emotionally aligned. Good sex doesn't solve every problem, but it creates a stable emotional base that makes challenges easier to face together. 35. In the end, good sex truly is the backbone of real intimacy. It supports emotional closeness, reinforces trust, and keeps relationships dynamic rather than stagnant. Even couples treat sexual connection as a meaningful part of their bond and not an afterthought. Intimacy stays alive. This is what transforms relationships from something that merely lasts into something that feels deeply satisfying, connected, and real. But honest is your sex life bringing you closer or pushing you apart? Leave it in the comments. Thank you very much for being with me this far. Have a special time ahead. See you soon.